Okay, so we saw that Tableau is categorizing our different fields, and it is also giving it a role. So we have dimensions on top and measures on bottom. Dimensions contain descriptive values, such as names, dates, and geographical data. You can use dimensions to reveal details in your data, that is, qualitative details. We also have measures, which contain numeric, quantitative values that you can measure. Measures can be aggregated, and when you drag a measure onto the view, Tableau will apply an aggregation to that measure. It's sum by default. So let's show this by building what we built before. We'll grab region, and we'll see its 4 distinct values as a dimension. And then we'll double click on quantity, and we can see the numbers here, the measures, and you can see here that it is the sum of quantity. And now we can also double click on sales, and we can see quantity and sales. To discuss a little bit more about dimensions and measures, you can see that in general measures are numbers and dimensions are not. But sometimes, like row ID, it is a number. Now, why would we have a number up here instead of in the measures? So you can tell the difference between a number, whether it should be in measures or it should be in dimensions, based on whether you'll need to do any calculations on it, or if you would want to be able to aggregate it at some time. So for sales, if you have several orders in a day, you might want to know what the sum of those sales are. But if you have several orders in the day, and they're on rows 2, 3, 4, and 5, you might not want to know the sum of the rows. So Tableau is smart enough that when it sees ID, it knows that it belongs up in the dimensions. Now you can switch. So if row ID was actually something you would want to aggregate for some reason, you can drag it down to the measures and add it down there. But in our case, row ID isn't something that you want to sum or average. Can you think of any other numbers that might not show up as a measure that should be a dimension? Comment below with your answers. As we discussed before, dimensions are on top, measures are on bottom, and you can see that blue is associated with dimensions and green is associated with measures. But it's a little bit more complicated than that. So dimensions are qualitative and measures are quantitative, but blue means we want our label to be discrete and green means we want our label to be continuous. Let's make a new sheet and make a visualization to kind of show this. So we can bring on quantity, and we're going to use it as a dimension, but you can see even when it's a dimension you can choose continuous or discrete. So right now it's a dimension but it's green. It's a little bit different than what you might expect. And then we'll do sales. So now we can see over the different quantities what our sales was. Has been for this period of time that we're looking at. I believe it's 4 years. So for when people bought 3 items, the total sales was that number. And you can see that this is an axis. So it's from 1 to 15. Now, if we change it from continuous to discrete, you can see that 1 is a label, 2 is a label, and it's not an axis ranging from 1 to, it doesn't even have 15 because there are no values under 15. These are just individual labels. So we go back, it's green again, and you can see that it's an axis. So we have 2 greens on here, so we have 2 axes. And change it back to discrete, and now we have 1 axis and 1 set of individual labels. So let's go back to our sheet 3. We have all of these different sales by the different quantity numbers, and up here we have our sorting. When you hover, it tells you what kind of sorting is going to happen. So we could sort quantity descending by sales. So we can see that when they buy 3 things, we have the highest sales. You can do the opposite, where it's the lowest to the highest number of sales. You can also do sorting more in depth by clicking on the quantity and right-clicking sort. So we could just sort by descending or ascending or by sales or alphabetic, which is not what we want. You can choose the field or you can manually change your sorting here. And now we're back to what we had at the beginning. Now that we've had an overview of how Tableau works, let's go into a little more detail. Tableau is very much built on the premise of drag and drop. So let's build a simple visualization and talk about what each of these shelves and marks cards specifically do. So we're going to make a simple chart which is average sales by region. So we know we want sales on, let's do sales on rows. Now for rows and for metrics, since this is continuous like we talked about before, it's making an axis for our sales. We also can drag region onto columns, and it makes one column per region. So that's how it works with dimensions. If you pull a dimension onto columns, you're saying I want one blank per column. I want one region per column. So if you wanted to do it by instead of region, if you want to remove something from a visualization, you just pull it back off, or you can hit undo or Control Z. Tableau has the benefit of having unlimited undos. So let's say we wanted to bring on city. Let's say we want one column per city, and that's what you get. And there's a lot of cities. So that's what it looks like. Let's take city back off. I want one column per region. And for sales, I want my rows axes to show me where sales are. Great. Now let's say we want to adjust the color of these bars. You can click on color and you can select any of them. So let's pick this nice blue, or we can pick an orange, and that's how you can determine the color. But if you want something else to determine the color, you can take region and drag it onto color, and now we have one color per region. Now with measures, again, since they're continuous, it's going to be more like a scale. So if I want them to be a different color based on sales, and I pull sales onto color, it's going to be darker where there's higher sales and lighter where there's lower sales. So it's continuous from light to dark. But for region, it is one color per region. So they're distinct colors. It's not continuous. Great. Let's say we want to sort this biggest to smallest, and we can look at size here. So if we want to adjust the size manually, we can click on it and drag it. But if we want the size to be based on something else, you choose a measure for the size. So if we want it to be wider based on sales, we will drag sales onto size, and we can see that it gets bigger with bigger sales. We can do the same thing and replace the sales with profit, and now it's bigger if there is bigger profit. And drag that back off. So you can determine manually, or you can do it with your measures. For label, let's say we want the sales onto label. Now we can see the exact sales number for each region. What if we wanted the name of the region there as well? We can drag region onto labels, and we can see sales for the West region. You can adjust which one goes on top. See how we have two T's here? Those are both labels. Great. Tooltip. When we click on tooltip, it'll show us what's going to happen when we hover. So as I hover here on East, it says region East sales, and that shows the sales amount. Now we talked about, I'll take my labels back off, wanting to make this visualization not for the sum of sales, but for the average of sales. So we will right click on our sum of sales here in the rows, hover over measure, which right now is sum, and change it to average. And we have a different result here. So let's sort again, and we can see that the South region actually has the highest average of sales, which was not the case for the sum. Now let's say we want our our sales to be on the label, but look, it's giving us the sum of sales label. So we just do the same thing and change it to average. Now we can see our average on the label. The label has some interesting options, like you can format this, and we could say maybe we want it to be all of them to be blue, and that happens right there. You can also choose to only show the minimum and the maximum. This becomes handy on a line chart where you don't want all marks labeled because it gets very messy, but you want the tallest and the shortest part to be labeled. And maybe you just want the tallest, so we'll click label minimum value and remove that checkbox, and now we just have the tallest value there. And one card that we haven't used yet is the filters card. So we could allow people to look at this, but only certain regions. So what we can do is we can come over to region and right click on it and click show filter, and it will add it to that filters card. And now we can remove central from the mix and just look at those ones. You see, if we remove south, the new highest, east, now has the label, but if we put it back in, south will have the label again. If we don't want to have these filters, we can pull it off there. Or if we wanted to filter out by country, we just have United States, so let's not filter by country. But we could pull in category, and we have these filters by category. If we select them all, they'll all be there. And we click show filter and it will bring it over here. And we can remove out technology, and the south still has the highest for the other two. But if we only include technology, you can see the difference there. So that's the basics of filters. Another thing that I can mention here is that you can change the type of mark manually. So you saw when we pulled on region and we pulled on sales, it automatically made us a bar chart, but we could change this to be a line chart, and you can see that the color changes because we told it to based on region. If we pull that off, then it would be a line chart there. You can change it to be a lot of different type of visualizations here. So when you're not using show me to help determine your graphs, you can choose it manually right here. Okay, now let's look at building a scatter plot. So a scatter plot is when you have a bunch of shapes and points on a visualization with two axes that are both measures. So if we take sales and put it on the y-axis, and we take discount and put it on the x-axis, we can see our point that represents all of our data with the sum of sales and the sum of discount. And if we wanted to see this per order, we'll take order ID and put it onto detail. Now what detail does is it determines the level that we are building our visualization at. So grabbing order ID and putting onto detail gives us all of these little points. So for each order, what was our sales and what was our discount. So we have out here some outliers that you can find very quickly. Let's actually do product ID instead. So I'll put it right over top of order ID and it will replace it. Now we see all of our products. Anything that has high sales is up here, anything that has high discount is over here. You can see that it sort of has a trend where things with high sales do not have high discounts, which makes sense. If we wanted to know what category these products all show up in, we could take category and put it onto shape. And now we have 3 different shapes that tell us the categories. Tableau has a cool new highlight feature, which allows you to show just the dimension that you want to see, but it leaves the other ones in place. So for example, if we click on furniture, first we have to turn on the highlight feature, and then click on furniture. And now you can see all of the furniture items popping up in our visualization and how they're kind of clustered in this area and the pattern for them. When we click on technology, we can see their pattern, which is a little bit different. So we have them by shape with category. Let's drag category onto color as well. If you remember, category will determine the color and the shape at this point. And so we can kind of see the patterns happening there. So if we want to see our high discounted items, they're all over here. And most of the things that are getting high discounts are office supplies, which is interesting. And then our highest sales product up here, now we could take that product ID and find out what that product actually is out of our, oh, look, we have product name. Let's replace product ID with product name. And we see that that is a Canon Image Class Advanced Copier. So this copier is our big salesperson. And office supplies binders do not give us very many sales, and we're highly discounting them. So now you know a little bit more about the details card and the shapes card, and about using highlighting in Tableau. So let's say we wanted to know by subcategory what our profit is like. We could grab subcategory and pull it onto columns, and we would say we want one column per subcategory. And then let's grab profit and pull it onto rows, and you can quickly see which categories are profitable and which ones are not. So we can also take profit and put it onto color so that you can see that even more clearly. Right now it is going from orange to blue, which is Tableau's default. If we wanted to change from what color to what color it was going, we have a lot of options in here when you go to edit colors. So maybe you wanted to go from red to blue, just to emphasize that the profit that's negative is bad. So we can hit apply, and now we can see red to blue. We have our categories here, our subcategories here, but let's separate it out by category. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to take subcategory off. I'm going to put on category, and now it's by category, and then I'm going to put subcategory on after it. So when we put it in order like this, the order matters in Tableau. So first it breaks it up by category, and then inside of that it breaks it up by subcategory. So furniture's all here, and then there's our subcategories under furniture. If we were to move subcategory to the front, it really doesn't group it appropriately, because first it's breaking it up by subcategory and then by category, and that's not effective. We end up with furniture, 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 furniture spread out across our visualization. So again, let's put category to the front, and now we have our profit by category by subcategory, and we can click sort subcategory descending by profit. And now what it does is within the highest group, within each group, it then sorts it by profit. So you can tell it's not going to break this group apart to move tables to the very end. It's going to keep tables inside of furniture. And then it doesn't move furniture to the very end either. So what we have here is a quick view by category by subcategory how we're doing on profit. We can see that tables is our biggest drain on profit, and so if we wanted to improve the profitability of furniture, maybe we would not sell tables anymore. It's just not working out for us. Another thing about this visualization that we could do to improve it is you can see that there's some of these words are getting cut off, so we could right click on this axis and click rotate label, and now you can read the whole word, and so that's helpful. Also up here we have our title, which right now is the same name as our sheet. So if we rename the sheet to profit by subcategory, then it names the title up here, so this is making it look a little bit better. And then here we have profit, and it shows it but without any like dollar signs. So let's come up here to profit and click format, and you can see that we can format the sum of profit to be currency. And we can do it currency by the thousands, and we can get rid of these decimal places, and now you can see it's just a little bit nicer, a little bit more clear. Maybe we don't have to have the label here that says category / subcategory. So we can hide field labels for columns, because it's pretty clear that these are categories and these are subcategories. So those are some formatting tips for you. Formatting in Tableau is one of those things where there are just a lot of different ways you could change things. So in more in-depth videos, especially from Simplilearn, you'll learn more and more about this.